Welcome to the Daily Deuce. I'm Gary Graves from just outside chilly and rainy Louisville, Kentucky. And in Maryland, I don't know what the weather is like there for you, John Webster, but my longtime friend, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. Everything's going well. It's going to be a dreary, cold, and rainy night here in Maryland. I don't like
Hmm.
that kind of weather. You know, Gary, I like it 95 or higher. That's my kind of weather.
Yeah,
So,
we should do this show from Las Vegas since you like that kind of weather so much.
man, 113 degrees, I'm fine, Gary. I'm fine. I am good to go. And,
Dude, you are a masochist. 113 degrees. You wouldn't be.
probably good to go solo. It wasn't that how the song went, good to go solo. So I'll be by
Mm.
myself, man. But man,
All right.
that being said, I ain't solo in this. A lot of sports went on this week, a lot of good stuff, man. We're
Yeah.
gonna talk about some different things today, but first we're gonna start off with the NFL and the NFC
Mhm.
East, like we always do. We're gonna start with the Washington Commanders and that heartbreaking loss they had to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tough one.
Yeah. John, you call it heartbreaking. Honestly, I call that one encouraging on a number of levels because, I'm not going to say it's a moral victory, but I saw more out of that team in that loss than I ever expected. And I mean, for them to be, to come up a point short, um, was just impressive to me. And their poise. I didn't have too much of a problem with the play calling, um, and I kind of expected, like that last play that basically settled it for the Steelers. I almost kind of expected it because how many times have you seen that where they have a play designed to draw a guy off sides, and all it takes is just one little slip in cadence. And I know this just being an offensive lineman back in the day that well, way back in the day that you know all it takes is, like I said, just one little flinch of a finger or something like that to draw a guy off sides. It works every single time. I have yet to see it fail, unless it fails to the point where, again, it's a 5-yard penalty for delay of game. But when it works, I mean, it's a thing of perfection. And of course, Russell Wilson executed it to a T.
Yeah, it was a very well thought out play. I still say they were not going to run the play, but they were able to achieve what they wanted.
Hmm.
Get Washington to jump off sides. You keep the ball. You continue to have the clock go down, and you win the ball game. Doesn't get a chance to try to win it on a field goal.
Very true.
I
Very true.
I, I thought Washington played hard. I think they played well, but I can see spots where it leads me to say what I've been saying. They're a year away.
Hmm.
Secondary cornerback. Uh, Lattimore, whenever he gets healthy, will help them. You can move St. Jude into a nickelback.
Hmm.
I think you need an edge rusher still. On the offensive side, the offense played well. They didn't really, well, they did get to Jaden Daniels. The offensive line
Yeah.
held up, but they were being bent because
Hmm.
that rush that Pittsburgh brings, with Watt,
Oh yeah.
they're tough. They also didn't have
Yeah.
Commanders didn't have Brian Robinson, which didn't help matters. I mean, Rodriguez still played hard, and what's the other kid's name? McNichol.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they both played hard, but they're not Brian Robinson. Um,
Yeah.
they fumbled a couple punts. Zakai's waiting for Jamison Crowder to come back off injury reserve because that's who is your number one punt returner. So I saw some positives, but all in all, a loss is still a loss.
Hmm.
Uh, they have a game coming up against Philadelphia this week, which they need to lock in and hopefully win that. So we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah. As I was saying about, encouragement and, there's a lot I feel like you can learn from a loss like that if you're a team like Washington. They always say you learn more from a loss than from a win because, of course, if you win, you become fat and happy and sometimes complacent. And unless you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, they're the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's all you can really say. Um, and they sure brought their fans. I'm not really surprised that Steeler Nation turned out. I think like years ago, like a long time ago, when I went to a Monday night game, that I swear, John, that there were probably more. There was more black and yellow in the stands than burgundy and gold, and that was that time when I thought, what in the world is happening? It's like, are fans just like selling their tickets on the secondary market? I mean, I didn't. Well, the answer is yes, but I didn't know it was to that extent, and I think that's what sparked that letter from the previous owners threatening to yank season tickets from those who sold them on that secondary market. But what I saw Sunday was pretty much the same thing because it's like they either travel or there are more Steeler fans in the Washington area than I ever imagined, or both.
They definitely travel well. I can't think of them. They have some NFL teams that do well traveling, but I don't know if there's any NFL team that travels as well as Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I wonder though, do they travel that well to Baltimore? That's what I'm going to be watching when they play the Ravens, because I don't think the Ravens are having that. I mean, if you're Washington, you're happy, in that place and with the kind of football that they've been, trotting out there the last 2 decades or something, they were just happy to have seats filled. But that was incredible. I mean, it was loud. I haven't heard an atmosphere like that at that stadium in like in never, I mean, that almost sounded RFK like to
Yeah,
me. And
yeah,
that's what was really, really encouraging. It doesn't have me running out and buying a Washington hat or a jersey or anything like that, but I am following that team a lot closer right now just because, there's actually something again to be encouraged about if you're a Washington fan.
definitely does. They're playing well. You can't help but like them and fall in love with them. They play so hard, and it's just a totally different environment now that you have a new ownership group in place. But
Yeah, yeah.
speaking
So
of, go ahead.
so do we just about the general state. I mean, we're 10 games in with the new quarterback, essentially, year two of the new regime. Is this enough, John, to you to really suggest a culture change within that, a long-term culture change, geared towards winning? Or do you feel like everybody's still trying to sort this kid out, sort this team out? The team might be trying to sort itself out. I guess what I'm saying is I would hate for it to be a 1 year flash in the pan thing or something where they fall off the map next year because, we've seen that with another team we're about to discuss in the division. And I just don't want to see that, for Washington, especially since we've been waiting what daggone near 30 years, for that kind of football. And we've only seen it maybe 3 or 4 years over that span, which is pretty sad because we got really spoiled under George Allen and Joe Gibbs.
Great question, Gary. I think they're on the right path. I don't think
Mhm.
it's finished. And what do I mean by that? You have to put some continuity to this. Next year will be the way it's going now. Next year will be a very tough year because you'll be playing a first place schedule next year or a second place schedule. I mean, this year, I mean, let me first say this. All you can do is play who is put in front of you. I've always said that. I'm not knocking that schedule, but what I am saying, you're only playing who is in front of you. And what you have
Yeah.
in front of you this year, you look at Cleveland's struggling this year, Chicago Bears are struggling. Really, the Bears struggle started with the Commanders game, to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
I think they are on the right path. I think there's a good foundation there, but it's not over. You got to keep growing it. You got to keep helping Jaden Daniels develop. You got to make sure he doesn't have a catastrophic injury. Uh, no, there are things they have to do. Are they on the right pace? Yes. Are they doing things correctly? Yes. But it is a marathon. It is not a sprint.
Yes, and of course that marathon includes a trip to Philadelphia that will be going on. Of course, we taped this several hours before the game, so it might be dated by the time our fans and viewers watch this. But I actually feel better about this game than I did against the Steelers. I mean, we're looking at that stretch, where they could go. Yeah, I think I don't think that they would lose all three, but I think the possibility of them going either 2-1 or 1-2 is very real. But I think this is one of the games that they can win, John, even going into an extremely hostile environment in Philadelphia because. Yeah, again, I think there's some things that they can learn there. The Eagles are not the Eagles of 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl. They are still good. They are still the team that you have to hurdle to, you say you got to beat the best to be the best. And but I really feel good about their chances just because of generally how they're playing. That they have poise. I mean, except for maybe one play, but I'm not gonna chalk that. That's just a rookie mistake, and I'll just leave it at that. But John, they're playing with a certain type of poise and confidence that I wouldn't have expected with all the changes that they made in coaching, some in the front office, and of course with personnel. But again, it's like football can be that way, and again, this is one of those games that I feel good about. If they lose, then I say, okay, this is a game maybe they're supposed to lose just because Philly is Philly and they are the best team in that division. But the way Washington plays, I still feel like they're playing well, and the team that's playing well at a particular moment is a team that's probably going to win the game.
Well, you can throw records out the window. This is
Hmm.
a very intense game. I, it's in Philadelphia. Philadelphia has gotten on a roll. They've won five straight. I think it'll be a close game. I want the Commanders to win. I'm rooting for them to win. Not sure they will pull this one out. It's just a tough situation. I think in order for them to win, they have to control the game offensively, meaning they have to have a very good ground attack. I also think Philadelphia this year on offense is leaned more towards running because they have Saquon Barkley back there as well as Jalen Hurts.
Ooh,
I think Washington has to find a way to control that. The question is going to be when they decide to throw the ball, you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith out there. The matchup on the corners with Serge Still and with St. Jude, it's not advantageous. That's where the struggle is going to be, especially with AJ Brown. AJ Brown really has great days against the Commanders. He'll probably be matched up against St. Jude. And again, St. Jude plays hard. I just don't think he is a I think that he's not playing in his right situation. I think he's more of a nickel back than he is a starting quarterback. So with that being
Yeah,
said, we'll see what happens.
yeah. All right, let's look to New York before we go down to Dallas. What do you think about the Giants right now?
Well, I think we were able to see the real Daniel Jones. I think that's the thing for sure. He didn't look like Y.A. Tittle in this game. He looked more like okay, give me a quarterback from yesteryear.
Joe Pisarcik.
Yeah, he looked like Joe Pisarcik. That's who he looked like. That's exactly. He didn't look like Phil Simms. He didn't look like Y.A. Tittle. He didn't
He didn't even look like Jeff Hostetler.
Jeff Hostetler. He looked like Joe Pisarcik. So and they have a
Hmm.
bye. I I don't know what they're going to end up doing with the Giants. They are really struggling. They lost to the Carolina Panthers. That's probably a team that you really do not want to lose to. Um, I
Give me two teams that you don't want to lose to in the NFL.
Carolina
Okay, give me the other one besides the Panthers. I'll give you a hint, and it involves another undersized quarterback.
undersized quarterback. AFC.
Either league,
I'm
but
asking you. You said it's undersized quarterback. Is it an undersized quarterback in the AFC?
uh, no, it's in the NFC.
NFC. Undersized quarterback. Besides Bryce Young at Carolina, I give up, Gary. What you got?
Arizona, Kyler Murray.
Well, you know what, Gary? I'm gonna tell you something. Arizona's in first place. They're not so you lose to them right now. It's not as bad as it could be. Kyler Murray, in my opinion, I really think he doesn't get his just due as far as being a good quarterback. I think he does very well. Um, I,
He has to overachieve, in my opinion.
he
And I would chalk a lot of it up to the size. And yeah, you're right. They are 6-4, but I feel like that's a team they're on top because teams like the 49ers and well, actually everybody else in the division is underperforming. They are overperforming, and you're right. You give them some dap. But I always feel like they're also the kind of team that could probably lose five in a row. That's how mercurial they are to me.
yeah, they are well,
I'm about to
you,
eat
you
my
again
words.
again you bring up a good point with them. You know,
Maybe I'm not convinced. I think that's what it
and
is. I don't think I'm convinced right now with
the
them,
commanders went through them like a hot knife through butter. So and the other thing that you mentioned, the NFC West is not what it used to be or what it's anticipated to be. So you have San Francisco struggling this year, the Rams struggling. They couldn't even score a touchdown on Monday night against Miami.
At home.
You
At
know,
home. That
and
that's inexcusable. That is just unacceptable, especially
Seattle started off fast, but now Seattle's going back and forth, up and down. You don't know what you're getting with them. But back
yeah, and
to your
they're
original
hurting
point,
too.
yeah, back to your original point. Who do you not want to lose to besides the Carolina Panthers? I'll go to the AFC. I'll say the Cleveland Browns. That's somebody you don't
Mhm.
want to lose to for a variety. I'll just say, and I'll leave it alone. I'll say for a variety of reasons, and I'll just leave it there. But yeah, I I, I think the Giants going the way they did against Carolina did not help, and going to a bye week, you're giving a lot of people too much time to think what else could they do. Hopefully, they will
Mhm.
not take upon their thoughts and act upon their thoughts. But we,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you had you know, you did have one other game. It was kind of like a cartoon. It was Dallas and Philadelphia. You know, um,
Part two.
I thought I was watching Foghorn Leghorn there, man. I said, you
I
know.
see. I would have, John. I would have thought that you would have picked out our favorite comedic trio, the Three Stooges, because that's what it looked like to me. You ever
Oh,
remember that one where the Three Stooges played football?
yeah, yeah. Was it was that painful. It was
Yeah.
that painful. I don't know if I give Dallas credit for saying it's not over. We're gonna keep playing like we're gonna get in the playoffs, or I look at it like they just don't know when to stop because it's an unfortunate situation there. I mean, some
Yeah.
people, a lot of people, if you're not a Dallas fan, you get a lot of thrill and joy out of this. But it's
Yeah.
unfortunate because the one thing I will say, and I've said this, that there are teams in various sports that when they're relevant, the whole game is better.
Mhm.
And I say Dallas, whether you like them or not, when they're winning and they're relevant, it makes everything else better in the NFL. Same thing with the Yankees in baseball.
Mhm.
Same thing with
Win or
the
lose. Win or
yes, same thing
lose.
with the Celtics and the Lakers in basketball. We can go down to the college level and we can say, well, I joke about Notre Dame all the time. Everybody that knows me knows I love Notre Dame for all their sports.
Mhm.
But all jokes aside, if they're winning, it makes things a little bit more, when they're relevant, it makes things a little bit more interesting, whether you like them or you hate them. If all of those things, it does make it more relevant and more interesting.
Mhm.
Back to Dallas.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, back to Dallas. That this it's just a well, it's not a good show. I had to catch myself. I realized we're a family show. I was getting ready to call it something else, but it's not a good show at all. What's going on in Dallas? Uh, Jerry Jones, it, I mean, they're at a point now where they call the beginning of the season the last dance, and it's just a dance. I can't even call it
With two left feet.
it's just, and then you got players making some comments that I personally think you shouldn't make because when you make them, you're leaving open-ended for others to interpret. So it's just not a good situation. Dak Prescott, he's really hurt with a hamstring. Some reports I've read, he tore the hamstring off the bone. That's really rough. You suspended Zeke Elliott for disciplinary reasons. It's just they're in the news for the wrong reason, Derek. They're in the news for the wrong reason.
Yeah, I agree. And even though I should be reveling in their misery, I'm not because I, I think I'm detached enough from Washington fandom to kind of look at the league as a whole. And it's like what you said. If they're relevant, the whole league benefits because as many people tune in because they love the Cowboys. People tune in to watch them lose. They're not tuning in to watch this team fail. That's what this team is doing right now is failing. They're not just losing, they are failing. They can't do anything right, and nobody wants to see that. I can't remember what point I tapped out on that game, but I just remember saying to myself, I can't watch this anymore. They always talk about like a train wreck. The thing about a train wreck is that yeah, it's horrifying to watch, but you can't look away. Well, this is an exception. It is hard to watch that team. It's like, when I asked you a few minutes ago about, what team don't you want to lose to, and you brought up the Cleveland Browns, and that just kind of opened up a whole can of worms of teams that are just hard to watch. And it's like the Browns, the Panthers, the Giants, the Patriots. Did I mention the New York Jets? Um, Yeah, but the Cowboys right now they are just unwatchable. And again, I don't know if they'll win. I don't see them winning more than two more games the rest of the year, and I don't know when those two games are coming back. Dak Prescott is about to have season-ending surgery if he hasn't had it already, and I just don't see any hope because again, you've got guys talking in the media, which they generally don't do like that, but the frustration is showing. Um, Jerry Jones just seems delusional in terms of thinking this team can make the playoffs, and he's delusional in terms of how he's running his team right now. And I just don't see any path to improvement,
Well,
immediate improvement
I
to be
can't
to be
disagree
correct.
with you. I don't know what they do next. I don't know where they go next. It's just a rough situation. But I can tell you where we're going to go next. We're going to wrap this up by talking about the NCAA's latest, I call it
Yeah.
brackets, for lack of a better term, the latest in college football playoff. Garrett, talk about it, man. What we got going on here?
Well, I mean, you really didn't see any movement among the top four. Well, with the exception of Texas. Not sorry, not Texas. Gosh, who just fell out?
Oh, Georgia.
Miami. Miami falling out,
And
and
Georgia lost too, right?
oh, that's right. Yeah. And Georgia lost too. So yeah, those two teams. So yeah. So you got Ohio State, Texas, and Penn State is now number four. We'll see how again, that's one of those ones. If I was on that committee, I would put Indiana in there right now as opposed to Penn State.
How do we
What do you
get you?
think?
How do we get you on the committee?
Well, $1 million is a good way to start that I can think of. I have no background in college athletics other than writing about it for a living, but
Man,
I'll just say it like this. I'm not just putting Indiana in there because they're they're just 90 miles up the road in Bloomington. I'm saying this because Penn State has a loss, Indiana has ten wins.
yep.
Penn State did not look good against Ohio State. That's one that just kind of mystified me. I understand about dropping dropping Georgia and Miami out. I don't know if Miami sniffs the top four, ever again after that performance. And I think now you have to really start looking at some of these teams below Miami, maybe even below Georgia. I still think Georgia is going to be in that mix, near that top four when all is said and done. And Ole Miss. That was I was impressed by that because Ole Miss really needed a quality win. I mean, the way that they had been playing, the way that they had been losing games, and I'm here in Kentucky. And I'm thinking about a month ago, that was probably a good loss for them because Kentucky just had a monster defense. I mean, they still have a good defense, but Kentucky they lost all four of their SEC games at home. They play a non-league game against Murray State on Saturday, and that'll probably be the last time they win at home because in 2 weeks they have to play Louisville, and Louisville is what number 19 in the playoff, and they're about to beat Stanford this weekend. All I'm saying is that I think you got the wrong Big Ten team outside that top four with a bye, and I hope that rectifies itself this week. And that's all I'm going to say on that.
Well, it's going to be interesting. Um, I agree with you that Indiana's not getting enough recognition that they deserve. I think something to be said for that, not this week, but next week when they play Ohio State at Ohio State. I also want to mention there's a couple teams in a not so relevant conference called the Big 12 that are kind of making some noise, Gary. And the way it's shaking down, I'm not saying it's going to shake down like that, but I'll say this.
Up to me.
If one of those teams that happens to be coached by Deion Sanders wins their next three, which is against this week they have Utah, then they go to Kansas, then they finish the season at Oklahoma State. They win all three of those. They're in the Big 12 championship game. They'll probably play against well, right now it's like Brigham Young if everything shakes down the way it's shaking down. And if they win that, I
Yeah.
I don't want to be on the committee and Colorado's on the borderline. You got to make a decision. I don't want to be the one to, you know, I tell you, and they're playing consistent ball. It's not a lot of conversation being said about them right now, but they're 7-2, Gary. They're
Yeah.
2 and going in a direction where we can play one game at a time. If they beat Utah, they're 8-2 with 2 games to go.
Yeah. You know, the team, okay, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Colorado, but the team I thought you were going to talk about from the Big 12 would be BYU.
Well, yeah, well, I kind of indirectly said it because the way it's shaking down, they're going to play each other. If it stays the way it's going now, they're going to play each other in the Big 12 championship, and then
Hmm.
only one of them's gonna make it, to be considered. And on a last point, and we can talk more about this in the future. Notre Dame plays Virginia this week. I think they will be okay, but they have a game coming up against Army. And if they lose to Army, and Army is undefeated right now, if I'm not mistaken,
Hmm.
and you really have to start giving some consideration to Army as well.
Yeah. Army has they have a lot of teams they have to leapfrog because the American Conference doesn't quite have that profile just yet. I mean, they've got some good teams. I mean SMU won that conference last year before they jumped to the ACC, and SMU looks like a team that hadn't been on hadn't had the death penalty. They look like the team like the Pony Express days, just in a different thing. But to your point, Army is impressive, but with the kind of conference schedule that they play, yes, let's see, they've beaten Air Force. Trying to think who else they've beaten, but I'll say that with Army, they're a team worth watching, but there are too many teams that have stronger schedules that they'd have to leapfrog. And unless they just run the table, and, they beat Navy, the second week of December, um, or gosh, I'm trying to think, when the American championship is. But yeah, it might be a week after that. They might be playing in that game, but they need a lot of teams to lose ahead of them for them to move up, even though they're unbeaten. A lot of these two and possibly three lost teams just because of the conferences, their Power Four conferences that they play in. That's what the committee looks at, and that's what they look at. I mean, heck, even the voters in my employer's poll, the top 25, they will look at that schedule and say, yeah, they deserve to be ranked, but do you move them ahead of a Mississippi or a Georgia or a Texas A&M or Kansas? I mean, or even Colorado.
It's gonna be interesting, Gary. I love this time of the year. It's a lot of fun. And as always, we don't have enough time to talk about everything we want to talk
Right.
about. Take us home, Gary.
All right, let's see. Well, as John said, we have plenty of football coming up this weekend. We have a big game between Tennessee and Georgia in the SEC. Let's see. We've got plenty of basketball. We've got plenty of hockey. We've got women's basketball. I mean, there are a number of marquee games coming up. And what I love about the second week of college basketball, it's like, yeah, you move away from those warm-up games, but now, you start to have, some of these little festivals and tournaments coming up leading into Thanksgiving. And in women's basketball, it's going to be impressive. South Carolina's still the team to beat, but you've got a number of teams behind them. USC worth watching. So, folks, watch all the games. There's so much more to watch. You don't have elections or anything else to worry about. In fact, the only thing you got to worry about is, who's going to cook the macaroni and cheese for Thanksgiving, and that's 2 weeks away.
Hey, that's a very good point too about the macaroni and cheese, Dave. But anyway, hey, thank you all for watching again this week. Watching sports, whether you watch the WNBA, the NBA, I'm sorry, not the WNBA, women's college basketball or men's college basketball, whether you watch the NBA, whether you watch the NFL, or some college football, or some soccer, or some hockey. Just make sure you watch some sports, and we'll see you again real soon. Take care.